Welcome back to Sleeping History Dreams. Tonight, we step into a real moment from the past, through the lives of the people who lived it, the places they walked, and the records they left behind. Settle in and let the story begin. The air was thick with tension on May 29th, 1453, as the sun began its ascent over the city of Constantinople, the once magnificent capital of the Byzantine Empire, with its towering walls and golden domes, now stood on the brink of annihilation. Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, known as the Conqueror, had gathered an army of perhaps 80,000 men, their banners fluttering in the morning breeze, ready to lay siege to the city that had withstood countless assaults. As the first rays of dawn illuminated the siege towers and cannons, a deep rumble echoed through the streets. The massive cannons, crafted by the Hungarian engineer Orban, unleashed a barrage of stone projectiles that struck the ancient walls with a force that reverberated through the city. Witnesses described the sound as akin to thunder, a harbinger of the devastation to come. The walls, which had protected the city for over 1,000 years, trembled under the relentless assault. Inside the city, the defenders, numbering around 7,000, prepared to make their stand. Among them was the last Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI, Palaiologos, clad in armor, his face set with determination. He rallied his troops, shouting words of encouragement. "We shall not surrender. We shall fight for our city, our faith, our very existence." The defenders readied their weapons, their hearts pounding in unison with the distant roar of cannon fire. As the sun reached its zenith, the siege intensified. The Ottomans pressed forward, launching waves of infantry against the crumbling walls. The clash of steel rang out as soldiers from both sides engaged in fierce, hand-to-hand combat. Blood stained the cobblestones, and the air was filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the cries of the wounded. But amid the chaos, a crucial moment arrived. A group of Ottoman soldiers, emboldened by the relentless fire, breached a section of the wall. Panic erupted among the defenders. As they turned to regroup, Constantine XI, resolute and unyielding, led a countercharge into the fray, determined to drive back the invaders. The tide of battle shifted, but only momentarily. In a final desperate attempt, Constantine fought valiantly, his sword cutting through the enemy ranks. But the numbers were overwhelming. Soon he was surrounded. As the emperor fell, his last words echoed across the battlefield: "The city is lost." But to understand how we got here, we must explore the intricate web of politics, ambition, and the unyielding spirit of a city that had once been a beacon of civilization. From its founding in 330 AD as Byzantium to its transformation into Constantinople, the events leading to this fateful day reveal a history steeped in glory and despair. In the early 15th century, the world was a complex tapestry of empires, cultures, and ambitions. The Byzantine Empire, once a beacon of civilization, was now a shadow of its former self. The great city of Constantinople, founded by Emperor Constantine in 330 AD, stood as a remnant of Roman glory, its walls battered but resilient. By 1453, the population had dwindled to around 50,000, a stark contrast to the hundreds of thousands who once thrived within its fortified boundaries. The vibrant marketplaces, filled with spices, textiles, and the echoes of daily life, were now subdued, the laughter of children replaced by an eerie silence. At the heart of this city was Constantine XI and Palaiologos, the last Byzantine emperor. He was a man of noble lineage, known for his courage and determination. Constantine had ascended to the throne in 1449, inheriting not just a title, but a crumbling legacy. Despite his royal blood, he was acutely aware of the precarious state of his empire. The Ottoman Turks, led by the ambitious Sultan Mehmed II, were encroaching upon his borders like a dark cloud ready to burst. Mehmed, only 21 years old, was fiercely driven and possessed a keen strategic mind, a combination that made him a formidable adversary. He was determined to conquer Constantinople, viewing it as the key to his vision of a vast empire. In the years leading up to the siege, Mehmed had been preparing his forces meticulously. By 1453, he commanded an army estimated at around 80,000 men. a diverse mix of seasoned soldiers and fervent recruits drawn from various regions of his burgeoning empire. The Ottomans had a reputation for their discipline and innovative tactics, and under Mehmed's leadership, they had developed a formidable artillery corps. The Sultan had commissioned the construction of massive cannons, including the famous Basilica cannon, capable of hurling stone projectiles weighing over 600 kilograms. Such weaponry was revolutionary, promising to breach the famed walls of Constantinople, which had withstood numerous sieges for over 1,000 years. As the Ottoman army began to assemble outside the city, the atmosphere within Constantinople was one of desperation and determination. The citizens, aware of their dire situation, were united in their resolve to defend their home. Constantine XI rallied his troops, instilling in them a sense of duty and hope. He famously declared, "We shall fight for our city, our faith, and our freedom." The defenders, numbering only about 7,000, included soldiers, artisans, and civilians, all willing to take up arms against the oncoming tide. The walls of Constantinople were its first line of defense, constructed of massive stone blocks, some measuring over 7 meters thick. Yet even these formidable barriers were beginning to show signs of wear. The once impenetrable fortifications were now vulnerable after years of neglect and the sheer number of cannons aimed at them. The defenders knew that the odds were against them, yet they were fueled by the belief that divine protection would safeguard their city. The city's defenders included not only Greek soldiers, but also mercenaries from across Europe, each driven by a mixture of faith, loyalty, and the lure of glory. As the siege commenced on April 6, 1453, the cacophony of cannon fire shattered the dawn. The ground trembled beneath the weight of the Ottoman artillery, and the air was thick with smoke and the cries of battle. Each blast sent shockwaves through the city as the defenders scrambled to fortify their positions. They repaired walls, constructed barricades, and prepared for the inevitable assault. The sense of urgency was palpable. The clock was ticking, and they were aware that their time was running out. On the other side, Mehmed II was relentless. His strategists devised plans to exploit every weakness. They constructed a massive fleet to blockade the Golden Horn, cutting off potential reinforcements and supplies. The Sultan also implemented psychological warfare, employing tactics to sow fear among the defenders. He promised his soldiers wealth and land as rewards for their bravery, creating a fervor that could not be easily quelled. The siege turned into a brutal contest of wills. The defenders, exhausted yet unyielding, faced wave after wave of attacks. Their resolve was tested daily as they witnessed the relentless bombardment of their city walls, yet they clung to the hope that help might come. In their hearts, they believed that the spirit of their ancestors lent them strength. They remembered the achievements of Justinian, the great emperor who had once ruled with justice and power, and how the city had flourished under his reign. Yet hope began to wane as the days turned into weeks. Each sunrise brought renewed assaults, and the sound of cannon fire became a cruel reminder of their reality. The defenders' numbers dwindled, their supplies ran low, and the once vibrant city began to feel like a tomb. Amidst this despair, a sense of unity persisted. The people of Constantinople, from merchants to soldiers, were woven together in their fight for survival. As the final days of May approached, the city stood on the precipice. The inhabitants, facing the inevitable, were determined to defend their heritage, their faith, and their way of life. They fortified their spirits, knowing that their struggle was not just for themselves, but for the legacy they would leave for generations to come. They were aware that the fall of Constantinople would not only signal the end of their city, but also mark a significant turning point in history, one that would resonate long after the last stone fell. In those fateful moments, as tensions rose and the air thickened with the scent of gunpowder and fear, the spirit of a city that had once been the center of the world awaited its destiny. Would it become a memory, a footnote in the annals of history? Or would its legacy endure, whispered through the ages? Only time would tell. By the early 15th century, the Byzantine Empire was a shadow of its former self. Its power diminished and its territories reduced. Constantinople, once the capital of a vast empire that spanned continents, now stood as a dwindling bastion of Eastern Orthodox Christianity, encircled by the encroaching forces of the Ottoman Turks. led by Sultan Mehmed II. The Sultan, born in 1432, was a formidable strategist whose ambition mirrored the vastness of his empire's aspirations. He envisioned a future where Constantinople would be the centerpiece of his dominion, a gateway between Europe and Asia. The city's defenses, while still impressive, were showing signs of wear. The walls of Constantinople, constructed by Emperor Theodosius II in the 5th century, boasted a double-layered fortification, complete with watchtowers and a moat. However, by this time, these ancient stones had begun to crack under the weight of centuries and the relentless advance of time. The population, once around 50,000, had dwindled as famine and disease took their toll. The citizens of Constantinople, weary from years of conflict and uncertainty, faced a grim reality. They needed to rally together, for their survival depended on it. On the eve of the siege in April 1453, the city was gripped by a palpable tension. The defenders, numbering around 7,000, included not only soldiers but also civilians who had taken up arms to protect their home. Among them was a young soldier named Lucas, who had witnessed the gradual decline of his city. He believed fervently that they could withstand the Ottoman onslaught, that the walls would hold, and that the spirit of Byzantium would not be extinguished. "We are the last guardians of the faith," he declared to his fellow defenders, his voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at their hearts. Sultan Mehmed II, meanwhile, was determined to bring the city to its knees. His forces, estimated at around 80,000 strong, were a mix of seasoned warriors and eager recruits, all united under a singular purpose. The Sultan had learned from the failures of previous sieges. He had studied the weaknesses in the Byzantine defenses and devised a plan to counter them. Mehmed's ingenuity was on full display as he ordered the construction of massive cannons, the largest of which weighed over 18 tons, capable of hurling stone projectiles weighing up to 600 pounds. These weapons would be used to breach the once impervious walls of Constantinople. On May 6, 1453, the Ottoman forces began their assault. For weeks, the sound of cannon fire reverberated through the air, the rumble echoing like thunder across the city. The defenders, fortified by their faith and their belief in the strength of their walls, held firm. "With God on our side, we cannot falter," proclaimed Constantine XI and Palaiologos, the last Byzantine emperor. His resolve inspired many, but whispers of doubt began to creep in. As the cannons battered the walls, cracks began to appear, and the defenders could feel their hope wane with each thunderous blast. As the siege wore on, the citizens of Constantinople remained vigilant. They rallied together, forming a unified front against the looming threat. Markets bustled with the sale of food supplies, and people volunteered to repair the walls whenever they could. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of camaraderie, but the spectre of despair loomed ever closer. In the midst of this, the defenders sought solace in their faith. Churches overflowed as prayers beseeched divine intervention. The Patriarch of Constantinople, Gennadius Scholarios, offered words of encouragement, his voice steady as he urged the faithful to remain steadfast. "We are not merely fighting for our city, we are fighting for our very souls." Despite the fervent belief in their cause, the reality of war was harsh. The Byzantine defenses, once thought impenetrable, began to buckle under the relentless assault. On May 29, 1453, the fateful day arrived. The Ottomans launched their final assault, a brutal culmination of weeks of siege warfare. The cannons roared with renewed fury, and the walls began to crumble. In the chaos, Lucas fought valiantly alongside his comrades, urging them to hold their ground. Yet as the dust settled and the echoes of battle faded, an overwhelming silence enveloped the city. As the Ottomans breached the walls and flooded into the streets, the defenders' resolve crumbled alongside their defenses. Lucas found himself face to face with an Ottoman soldier, their weapons clashing in a desperate struggle. The young defender fought with every ounce of strength, but the sheer weight of numbers overwhelmed him. In that moment, the dreams of a once great empire began to dissolve into the annals of history. Simultaneously, Mehmed II entered the city, surveying the ruins of what had been a beacon of culture and faith. The triumph was bittersweet, for in his victory lay the end of an era. "Today we have conquered the city," Mehmed declared, but the words were tinged with the heavy weight of loss. The fall of Constantinople marked not merely the end of the Byzantine Empire, but also a turning point in the course of history. The city, a bridge between East and West, would now serve as the birthplace of a new era under Ottoman rule. As the dust settled, the people of Constantinople grappled with the reality of their loss. The dreams and aspirations that had once filled the streets were now replaced with uncertainty. Yet even in the face of defeat, the spirit of a city steeped in history endured. The echoes of the past lingered in the air, a testament to the resilience of those who had lived and fought within its walls. The memories of their struggles and beliefs would not be forgotten, for they had become part of the very fabric of history itself. On the morning of May 29th, 1453, the air was thick with anticipation and dread. For the defenders of Constantinople, this day marked the culmination of a siege that had begun nearly 2 months prior. Sultan Mehmed II, the young Ottoman leader, had unleashed his formidable forces upon the city, determined to capture the last bastion of the Byzantine Empire. As the sun rose, illuminating the battered walls of Constantinople, the defenders, numbering around 7,000, braced themselves for what seemed an inevitable onslaught. The previous night, Constantine XI Palaiologos called his remaining soldiers to a final assembly within the city. The scent of sweat and fear mingled in the air as soldiers gathered, many clutching their weapons, their faces drawn with the weight of impending doom. "Brothers," Constantine implored, his voice steady yet strained, "we have fought with valor and honor. Today we stand not only for ourselves, but for our ancestors and the faith of our forefathers. We cannot yield." As dawn broke, the defenders witnessed an unimaginable sight. The Ottoman army, estimated at approximately 80,000 strong, had assembled in disciplined ranks. Mehmed II, wearing a distinctive green robe symbolizing his claim to the caliphate, rallied his troops with fervor, promising them victory and the spoils of conquest. The sound of war drums echoed through the valley, instilling fear and determination in equal measure. The first cannon fired at the city's formidable walls, a massive Ottoman artillery piece known as the Great Bombard. Weighing nearly 18 tons, its thunderous roar reverberated through the streets, accompanied by the splintering of stone and the cries of the wounded. The walls of Constantinople, famed for their strength, began to tremble under the relentless bombardment. Historian Stephen Runciman noted, "The cannonade was the first time that the city's defenses had been so severely tested, and it was clear that the Ottomans had come prepared." As the day wore on, the defenders faced mounting casualties. The once proud Byzantine soldiers, fortified by a fierce loyalty to their emperor and their city, began to falter under the relentless assault. Reports from the front lines indicated that by midday, nearly 1,000 defenders had been lost, their bodies strewn across the ground, testament to their bravery and sacrifice. In the heat of battle, as cannonballs crashed into the city, some defenders questioned the wisdom of their stand. Among them was Lucas, a young soldier who had fought valiantly, but now found himself doubting the outcome. "Why do we resist?" he asked a fellow soldier, despair creeping into his voice. "We are but a handful against the tide. Do we not see the futility?" His words hung heavy in the air, a foreshadowing of the shifting morale. As the afternoon sun reached its zenith, the Ottomans, emboldened by their early successes, launched a full-scale assault. Waves of soldiers surged towards the breaches in the walls, their cries ringing out in fervent zeal. Constantine, witnessing the chaos unfold, rallied his men once more, urging them to hold their ground. "We are defenders of Christendom," he shouted, but even his impassioned plea struggled to pierce the growing despair among his troops. In a desperate attempt to turn the tide, the defenders mounted a counterattack, pushing back against the advancing Ottomans. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the tide might turn, yet the sheer numbers of Mehmed's forces overwhelmed the exhausted defenders. The walls, once a symbol of strength, now lay in ruins, crumbling under the weight of cannon fire and human desperation. By late afternoon, the city was gripped in chaos. The sounds of battle morphed into a cacophony of cries and the clash of weapons. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the Ottomans managed to breach the walls. The defenders, now fighting in the narrow streets, faced a relentless assault. The human cost was staggering. Estimates suggest that as many as 4,000 defenders had perished by this point, with many more injured. As the city fell deeper into disarray, Mehmed II commanded his troops to push forward, determined to capture the city before nightfall. "Let none escape," he ordered, his eyes gleaming with ambition. The walls of Constantinople, which had withstood numerous sieges for over 1,000 years, were now crumbling, and the reality of defeat began to settle heavily in the hearts of those who remained. Within the heart of the city, Constantine XI fought valiantly, refusing to abandon the city he had sworn to protect. As the Ottoman forces surged through the breaches, he spotted Lucas, now cornered and greatly outnumbered. "We must not yield," Constantine yelled, his voice rising above the din, but Lucas could only shake his head, tears mingling with the dirt on his face. At last, as darkness began to envelop the city, the inevitable became reality. The defenders, weary and outmatched, were forced to retreat into the inner sanctum of the city. The cries of the fallen echoed in the streets, a haunting reminder of the day's horrors. Constantine, realizing the gravity of their situation, uttered his final words: "The city is lost." As the Ottoman forces poured into the city, the human cost of the siege became tragically clear. The victory was complete, but at what price? Historians would later recount the fall of Constantinople not merely as a military conquest, but as a profound moment in history, where the echoes of a once great empire faded into obscurity, marking the end of an era for the Byzantine Empire and the dawn of Ottoman supremacy. In the silence that followed the chaos, the city lay in ruins, its streets stained with the blood of defenders and attackers alike. The world had changed irrevocably, and in the dim light of the last fading day, the remnants of a proud civilization were swallowed by a new power. As the sun rose over the battered walls of Constantinople on May 29, 1453, the city felt the weight of impending doom. The defenders, weary and beleaguered, stood resolutely against the might of Sultan Mehmed II's forces. Among them was Lucas, a young soldier who had joined the defense with grand dreams of valor. His heart raced as he clutched his spear, the weight of his duty resonating in his bones. Just days ago, he had looked upon these walls with a sense of invincibility. But now, the cracks were visible, both in the fortifications and in the spirit of the defenders. By the early hours of that fateful day, the Great Bombard, a monstrous cannon weighing 18 tons, had already begun its relentless assault. The booming echoes of its fire reverberated through the streets, sending plumes of dust and debris into the air. The Ottomans had breached the walls in several locations, and waves of soldiers surged forward, driven by the hope of conquest. As they advanced, the defenders prepared for the final stand, knowing that this day would determine the fate of not only their city, but the very essence of the Christian faith in the Eastern Mediterranean. Constantine XI, Palaiologos, the last Byzantine emperor, stood on the ramparts, surveying the chaos below. He felt the deep pang of despair as he witnessed his people fighting valiantly yet futilely against the onslaught. His heart, heavy with the knowledge that this could be the end of an era, steeled his resolve. "We must fight as if our lives depend on it," he shouted to his troops, his voice a rallying cry that cut through the din of battle. His eyes shone with determination as he urged them, "Let us defend our home, our faith, until the last breath." The defenders, numbering around 7,000, were vastly outnumbered by the Ottoman forces, estimated at nearly 80,000. Each time the Great Bombard fired, debris rained down upon them, and the walls that had stood for centuries began to crumble under the relentless assault. The cacophony of battle was punctuated by the cries of the wounded and the clash of steel. Lucas fought alongside seasoned veterans, their faces smeared with sweat and blood, embodying the spirit of defiance. Amidst the chaos, he found himself next to a fellow soldier, an older man named Alexios, who had fought in previous battles. "Lucas, remember what you are fighting for," Alexios shouted, parrying a blow from an Ottoman soldier. "This city, Vimene city, is our lifeblood. We must not let it fall." But as the hours wore on, hope began to fade. The defenders' resolve was tested, and many felt the weight of their inevitable defeat. Lucas caught a glimpse of the Ottoman banners rising triumphantly over the breached walls, and a chill ran down his spine. He could see Mehmed II, garbed in resplendent armor, directing his forces with the confidence of a conqueror. The Sultan had promised his men riches and glory, a promise that fueled their relentless advance. As the sun climbed higher, a fateful moment arrived. The Ottoman forces surged through the gaps in the wall, overwhelming the defenders in a tide of steel and fury. Lucas felt the heat of battle engulf him. The cries of his comrades faded into a distant hum. He fought with every ounce of strength, striking out at the invaders, but the tide was against them. In the midst of the chaos, a piercing scream shattered the din. Constantine XI had been separated from his men and found himself face to face with a contingent of Ottoman soldiers. In that moment of desperation, he fought valiantly, refusing to yield. His sword, though heavy and worn, swung with the ferocity of a lion defending its territory. Yet, as he fought, he felt the sting of multiple blows, the weight of exhaustion dragging him down. The moment hung in the air. The last Byzantine emperor standing defiantly against the forces of fate. "I shall not abandon my city," he roared, even as he faced overwhelming odds, but the battle was lost. In the heat of the fray, a soldier drew near, and with a swift strike, Constantine fell to the ground, his life extinguished. The death of Constantine XI marked not only the end of his reign, but also the end of an empire. As news of his fall spread, despair swept through the ranks of the defenders. Lucas, witnessing the moment of his emperor's demise, felt the ground shift beneath him. The heart of the city had been struck, and with it the will of its people began to falter. With the emperor dead, the Ottomans pushed forward, their victory now assured. The streets of Constantinople ran red with the blood of the fallen as Mehmed II's forces poured into the city. The defenders, once proud and resolute, found themselves overwhelmed, surrendering in droves. Amidst the chaos, Lucas stumbled through the remnants of the battlefield, disoriented and lost. He saw the faces of his comrades. Some were triumphant, while others were broken. The city that had once stood as a beacon of civilization now lay in ruins. The sounds of celebration from the Ottoman camp echoed in the distance, a stark contrast to the mournful silence that descended over the defenders' ranks. As the sun set on that fateful day, the world shifted irrevocably. Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire, had fallen. The remnants of its once glorious past would forever be marked by this moment, etched into the annals of history. Though the city was lost, the spirit of its people endured, whispering tales of heroism and sacrifice, a testament to the resilience of those who dared to stand against the tide of time. On May 30th, 1453, the dawn after the fall of Constantinople revealed a city transformed. The once glorious capital of the Byzantine Empire lay in ruins, its walls breached and its defenders scattered or slain. The streets, which had echoed with the vibrant life of trade, culture, and faith, were now hauntingly silent, save for the sound of distant mourning. Sultan Mehmed II, standing in the center of the devastation, gazed at the remnants of what had been the center of orthodoxy and the seat of the Byzantine emperors. He had achieved what many believed to be impossible, yet the sight before him bore a heavy price. In the days that followed, the city became a canvas of desolation and sorrow. The Ottoman forces, though victorious, were met with the grim reality of their conquest. Eyewitness accounts describe the streets littered with the bodies of defenders and civilians alike. The chronicler Ducas wrote, "The blood ran in torrents, and the stench of death filled the air." It was estimated that tens of thousands perished during the siege, with the final toll on the Byzantine side alone reaching approximately 60,000, including soldiers and civilians. The vast majority, unable to escape, faced the brutality of war within the city walls. Mehmed II, though triumphant, faced a daunting task ahead. He was determined to rebuild and repurpose the city, transforming it into the capital of his burgeoning empire. The Hagia Sophia, once a cathedral symbolizing the glory of Byzantium, was quickly converted into a mosque. The transformation was a move both strategic and symbolic. "We have taken this city, and now we sanctify it," he proclaimed, as the echoes of the muezzin's call to prayer began to replace the bells that once rang out for Christendom. The magnificent dome, which had stood for almost 1,000 years, now served as a testament to the Islamic faith, its mosaics covered yet not destroyed. The local populace experienced an upheaval of identity. Many Christians remained, grappling with their new reality under Ottoman rule. Some chose to convert to Islam, seeking safety and favor in the new regime, while others resisted, clinging fiercely to their traditions and beliefs. Among those who stayed was a woman named Maria, who had lost her husband during the siege. She wandered the ruins of her neighborhood, lamenting the loss of her family and the vibrant community that once thrived around her. "What is left for us?" she whispered to herself as she collected remnants of her life, a broken vase, a charred piece of wood from her home. Amidst the despair, new life began to emerge from the ashes. The Ottomans initiated reconstruction projects, repairing the infrastructure that had been damaged during the siege. The bustling markets of Constantinople slowly reopened, with merchants from across the empire bringing spices, textiles, and goods to trade. The Grand Bazaar was revived, a new center of commerce where the sounds of haggling and laughter began to seep back into the streets. But the city was forever altered. The vibrant mix of cultures that had defined Constantinople was now overshadowed by the dominant Ottoman presence. In the months following the conquest, the city's demographic landscape shifted dramatically. Many Greeks fled to the islands or the mainland, seeking refuge from the Ottoman grip. Those who remained were often subjected to heavy taxation as a means of ensuring their loyalty. The Ottoman government required the population to adapt and assimilate into the new order, which further strained the relationship between conquerors and the conquered. "The people of the city are like a great ship tossed on the sea," wrote historian Georgios Francis, capturing the uncertainty and turmoil that enveloped the remnants of the Byzantine identity. As the weeks turned into months, the psychological scars of the siege and the loss began to heal, albeit slowly. Religious leaders from both sides attempted to navigate the new realities, with some advocating for cooperation and coexistence. The Patriarch of Constantinople, Gennadius Scholarius, was appointed by Mehmed II, signaling a shift towards a more inclusive governance model. Yet the complexities of faith and politics often clashed, creating tension within the community. Scholarius sought to maintain the integrity of the Orthodox Church while also recognizing the authority of the Sultan, a balancing act fraught with challenges. The fall of Constantinople resonated far beyond its borders, altering the course of history in Europe. The news spread quickly, igniting fear in Christian kingdoms and prompting a re-evaluation of their own vulnerabilities. The fall of the city, often described as the end of the Middle Ages, marked the beginning of a new era of Ottoman expansion, one that would reshape the political landscape of the continent for centuries to come. Western powers reacted with alarm, and many began to seek new trade routes to bypass Ottoman control, leading to an age of exploration that would eventually culminate in the voyages of Columbus and Magellan. As autumn approached, the city continued to adapt to its new identity. The sound of construction mingled with the calls of vendors, and life began to normalize in the face of loss. Yet, for the defenders who had given everything to protect their home, the memory of the siege lingered. Lucas, the young soldier who had fought valiantly, now found himself haunted by the faces of fallen comrades. He wandered through the ruins, his heart heavy with grief, yet he understood that the fight was not over. "We have lost our city, but we carry its spirit within us," he would tell fellow survivors, a hope amid the sorrow. In the months that followed, the city, once a beacon of Christian faith, transformed into a symbol of Ottoman power. The echoes of its rich history persisted, woven into the fabric of its new reality. The struggle of its past would not be forgotten, as the remnants of its former glory quietly whispered through the streets, a testament to a civilization that had once thrived within its walls. As the dust settled over the once magnificent city of Constantinople, the echoes of its fall reverberated through the ages. The last remnants of the Byzantine Empire crumbled beneath the weight of Ottoman conquest. Yet the legacy of this pivotal event would shape the course of history in ways both profound and pervasive. On May 30th, 1453, the city transformed from a bastion of Christian faith into the heart of the Islamic world, and this shift would not only redefine the geopolitical landscape, but alter the very fabric of cultural identity across continents. In the immediate aftermath, Sultan Mehmed II, known as the Conqueror, sought to legitimize his rule and solidify his control over the newly acquired city. To this end, he declared Constantinople the capital of the Ottoman Empire, renaming it Istanbul. The Hagia Sophia, a majestic cathedral that had stood for nearly 1,000 years, was converted into a mosque, with its exquisite mosaics plastered over, a symbolic act of triumph and dominance. Witnesses like the Venetian merchant and chronicler Giovanni Battista Ramusio noted the transformation, recording, "They took possession of the city with great rejoicing, and the beautiful church was turned into a mosque, where the sounds of prayer replaced the tolling of bells." This moment also marked the beginning of a new era in art and architecture. Ottoman architects, inspired by Byzantine aesthetics, began to develop a unique style that blended their heritage with the grandeur of the conquered city. The Mosque of Süleymaniye, completed in 1557, exemplified this fusion, with its vast dome and intricate tilework echoing the splendor of the Hagia Sophia, while establishing a distinctly Ottoman identity. The blending of cultures birthed a rich tapestry that influenced not only architecture, but also the arts, cuisine, and daily life, molding the character of the city into a cosmopolitan hub that thrived on its diversity. Yet the fall of Constantinople was also a catalyst for change beyond its immediate borders. The Ottoman Empire's expansion into Europe raised fears among Christian nations, resulting in a series of conflicts that would shape the continent for centuries. Within a generation, the Ottomans threatened the heart of Europe, culminating in the Siege of Vienna in 1529 and again in 1631. The presence of this powerful empire forced European leaders to reassess their alliances and military strategies, leading to the formation of the Holy League in 1571, a coalition aimed at curbing Ottoman advances. The Battle of Lepanto in 1571, where a Christian fleet dealt a significant blow to Ottoman naval power, was a direct consequence of the heightened tension ignited by the fall of Constantinople. Moreover, the event catalyzed the age of exploration. As trade routes shifted and the Ottomans controlled critical passages to the east, European powers sought new paths to the riches of Asia. This quest led to the discovery of the Americas by Christopher Columbus in 1492, an endeavor born out of the necessity to bypass Ottoman territories. The impact was monumental, reshaping economies and societies on both sides of the Atlantic. The ensuing Columbian Exchange introduced new crops and livestock to Europe while bringing devastating consequences to indigenous populations in the Americas, illustrating how one city's fall could ripple across the globe. The fall of Constantinople also became a pivotal moment in religious history. For the Eastern Orthodox Church, the loss of its spiritual capital marked a profound crisis. Constantine XI, Palaiologos, had been seen as a martyr for his faith, his last stand immortalized in the hearts of Orthodox Christians. The mythologization of his sacrifice fueled a narrative of resilience and suffering, giving rise to a sense of shared identity among the Slavic peoples and other Orthodox nations. The echoes of his last words, "The city is lost," transformed into a rallying cry for future generations, inspiring uprisings and movements against Ottoman rule, such as the Serbian uprisings in the 19th century. Conversely, in the Islamic world, the fall of Constantinople was celebrated as a divine victory. It solidified the Ottoman claim to leadership among Muslims, reinforcing the legitimacy of their caliphate. Sultan Mehmed II was hailed as a hero, and his reign marked the zenith of Ottoman cultural and military prowess. The conquest became a symbol of Islamic resurgence, inspiring future campaigns and solidifying the empire's identity as a major world power. The reverberations of this victory were felt well into the 20th century, influencing nationalist movements and religious sentiments across the Middle East and beyond. Over the centuries, the narrative surrounding the fall of Constantinople has evolved, often distorted to fit various political agendas. In the West, it was viewed as a tragic loss, a symbol of the decline of Christendom, while in the East, it was celebrated as a triumph of Islam. This duality has permeated historical discourse, with each interpretation shaping the identities of nations and peoples. The enduring legacy of the fall continues to resonate today, influencing modern geopolitics and interfaith relations. As we reflect on the fall of Constantinople, we recognize a complex tapestry of cultural exchange, conflict, and transformation. The world that emerged from the ashes of its walls was irrevocably altered, a testament to how a single event can precipitate widespread change. What was once a vibrant center of Byzantine culture transformed into a crucible of empires, each leaving an indelible mark on the course of history. In the quiet halls of history, the echoes of this monumental event linger. The stones of the Hagia Sophia still bear witness to the triumphs and tragedies of the past, a reminder of the rich, often tumultuous legacy that has shaped our present. The remnants of Constantinople, now Istanbul, stand as a living testament to the resilience of human spirit, culture, and identity, inviting reflection on the enduring complexity of our shared history. The fall of Constantinople, a pivotal moment in history, illustrates the complex tapestry of human ambition and the relentless pursuit of power. Sultan Mehmed II, a young conqueror, demonstrated a profound understanding of strategy and warfare. His determination to transform the Ottoman Empire into a dominant force in the region was matched only by the desperate courage of the defenders. Led by Emperor Constantine XI, Palaiologos, their love for the city, their home, fueled a valiant but ultimately doomed effort to withstand the onslaught of a vastly superior army. As the walls of Constantinople fell, so too did the final vestiges of Byzantine power. The defenders, outnumbered and overwhelmed, embodied the struggle against insurmountable odds. Their bravery speaks to an inherent aspect of human nature, the desire to protect one's home, culture, and identity, even in the face of inevitable defeat. The echoes of their last stand resonate through time, reminding us that the fight for survival often brings forth the best and worst in humanity. In the aftermath, the transformation of Constantinople into Istanbul marked not just a shift in power, but a blending of cultures. The Hagia Sophia, once a symbol of Christian faith, became a mosque, illustrating the dynamic interplay of belief systems and identities. This metamorphosis invites reflection on how civilizations adapt and evolve, often at great cost. Human history is replete with such transformations, each leaving indelible marks on the collective memory of nations. Moreover, the narrative of Constantinople's fall serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of power. The ambition that drove both Mehmed and Constantine carried with it the seeds of failure. Empires rise and fall, dreams are forged and shattered, yet the human spirit persists. The desire for legacy, for recognition, drives individuals to extraordinary lengths, often leading to conflict and upheaval. One could argue that this relentless pursuit of ambition is both a gift and a curse, shaping destinies while simultaneously unraveling them. As we lay our heads down to rest, we carry with us the lessons of this storied past. The resilience of those who fought for their city, the inevitability of change, and the complexities of ambition and identity linger in our thoughts. History teaches us that every end is but a new beginning, a cycle of loss and renewal. And so, as we drift into slumber, let us remember the voices of those who came before us, their struggles and triumphs woven into the fabric of our own lives. May we hold their stories close, allowing them to guide us through the night as we dream of the legacies we wish to leave behind. Thank you for spending this time with us. If you enjoyed tonight's journey into the past, consider subscribing to Sleeping History Dreams for more long-form historical storytelling each week. Good night, and we'll see you in the next one.